Greetings, Internet. I'm pissed off and you should be too. I got myself some crummy notes and a beer. Alright. So, you and I are debt slaves. It comes up a lot, but some of the other jazz doesn't for some reason, and people aren't connecting the dots. These are some of the broad strokes. Seminar 8 is the most boring seminar I have for you, but it's the most relevant, especially today. And I'll try to keep this as pithy as possible, even though I am naturally long-winded. Yeah. So, this is the time frame. Let's see if we can do it this way. 1912. So back in 1912, there was no central bank. And as the notes read, a Republican veto system subject to the people choosing to buy a bond was how shit functioned. In other words, if you didn't want to go to war, you didn't buy a bond. And it would weigh out. Again, what people would think of in terms of democracy, but really it was the last death throes of the Republic, if you could call it that. Barely that. But you could think in terms of that. Government was small, and that's because they didn't have an endless budget to finance black projects and a number of other dastardly things which we have today. Now, if you think about when the Federal Reserve was created, you got this jazz. And you could think in terms of something you might already skip ahead and figure out. The Titanic sunk in 1912, right? There's a lot of hearsay, a lot of speculation. Titanic. That didn't come out too well. Either way, a lot of speculation surrounding that. You can look into it. One fella's wife hurt her ankle, I think in Italy, so they sold their ticket or gave their ticket away. I think they sold it. And that was one of the millionaires that didn't board the Titanic. And there's a list of them who did not board, but supposedly held a ticket and didn't get on the ship before it, allegedly sunk or did sink. Regardless, it's symbolic in a big fucking way. There is one too many stories having to do with this, whether or not it was swapped for, was it the Olympic or the Olympia? I can't remember. A sister ship that was already damaged. There's a whole bunch of shit you could look into, but think of it in terms of symbolism. And this took place, I think, in April. Is that right? Yeah. April 14th to April 15th, roughly enough, in the same year. Now, if you move forward, by December of the next year, that's when the Federal Reserve, we got the Fed. That's when the Fed was first introduced. And that did away with those bonds. It did away with the public having any say in what our masters spend. Plain and simple. Now, flash forward, crudely speaking, at least that's what I think I intend to do in this crappy fucking video. Yeah, we'll flash forward. So, flash forward to present day. And we're not dancing back and forth with two different years. It's, so far at least. We got 2023. And you guys already heard it's a distraction campaign. And what's the name of this fucking thing? The Titan sub. That supposedly imploded. I think somewhere near Canada and a bunch of other crap. It's pointless, but it has to do with this, if I'm not mistaken. Also symbolic, and 10 to 1, within about a year's time, a calendar cycle, if not sooner, our masters are going to do something. It's very, very telling. So what you want to do is be vigilant, not paranoid, for one. Also remember that as of July, Fed Now is being rolled out. Same year, next month. And most things online that I've left online are censored when it comes to this, so this video very well may be. But what you want to take to heart is whether it's an EMP attack or the grid just gets shut down or something along those lines, our masters are going to conduct another act of greater magic. That is coming. I can't say for sure that it's going to happen this December, but it's most likely going to bridge the winter months So you want to have supplies on hand, which is why I said be vigilant, not paranoid. It's something to consider. Our masters are putting this out there in plain sight. No one's doing anything to stop it. Case in point, why we've lived through debt slavery between these two periods in time. Another thing that I was going to rattle off, and I think I will in a second, is if you humor what I've left on the board. Where's the calculator at? Did I pull the calculator and then do this? Yes. So just humor it. Let's see if I can keep it in frame. So 1913, when the Federal Reserve was created, minus present year, allegedly. Remember, our calendar is shit. But if you do that, you get the binary boot loop. Think of that what you will. I consider it a binary boot loop. It has to do with a reset in a big way. I've taught the internet about the number 12, among other things, but I don't think most people probably saw any of this jazz. Let's see. Let's see if I can keep this in frame too. 1 second. I call it a binary boot loop because it's binary. You got a 1, 1, 0. That's how many years in between these two acts of fill in the blank. If you break this down, crudely speaking, you got a 2 in here and you got a 1 in here. In other words, the 2 and you got a 10, which reduces to a 1, 21. Now, if you take the number 12, it's always going to lead back to 9, which I'm telling you something having to do with the flip side of 12. Remember, if you use their powers combined, you end up with Apollo the sun, which our masters in many ways are worshiping. It's also, ironically, the sigil of gold, which are promissory notes at present, you know, the green money, the greenbacks. They aren't backed by a gold standard or even a silver standard. It's absolute debt. Everything, anything that is produced and is spent, anything that's in circulation is debt. That's why we're debt slaves. It's not rocket science. Yeah. Take 110 and mirror it. And if you mirror it, coincidentally, you get the flux capacitor. Again, you could do what I just did, and you'll get a 3 and a 3, which denotes Apollo the sun again. When I said I've taught the internet about 12, take any fucking chain of 2-digit numbers and break them down. Naturally, things like 5 and 7 are going to reduce to a 12 out of the gate. All numbers will reduce to this eventually because all things lead back to 9. If you don't believe me, subtract things and they're going to produce multiples of 9. Just do it. This is going to produce a 3. And when you start adding these together, this chain is going to lead back to a recursive downward spiral of 9, having to do with a reset. The flip side of this is, if you think of 6 days of the week and you add up 6, 1 through 6, it's going to equal 21. The flip side of what I'm teaching you. It dances back. That has to do with the rainbow bridge. That has to do with how our chakras work. That has to do with how the fucking battery functions. And our masters are aware of this type of thing, but what do I know? Also, you can humor this. There's no power in the word, right? But you could take the English word reset, since we're living through the Great Reset and no one's doing anything to stop it. And you can break this down. You're going to get a 9, you're going to get a 5, you're going to get a 1, you're going to get a 5, you're going to get a 2. And I have not taught the internet what the isolated values mean. But if you appreciate to cast 1 is to cast 9, what are you looking at? You're looking at a 12. And if you add the binary numbers, the 1 and the 9, which create the 1 and the 0 again, the 10, you're looking at 22. The 22 has to do with something bigger than that. It has to do with the mother letters, the double letters, the single letters, and their combined values, their combined powers. And a thought for another day. But before I digress, I have to squeeze this into a TikTok video, which is fucking stupid. Out of the numbers 1 through 22, just for fun, since now we're in the year 2023, allegedly. And you're going to end up with this. 253. So let's talk about acts of greater magic, which, for the slow thinkers, the misinformed, and the curious, are blood sacrifices. And theory and practice, humor what I'm about to show you. Just humor it. And I'll show you another example, or I'll just tell you real fast. You can take Pearl Harbor as well, but it doesn't jive. Okay? Humor me. So, Mount Rushmore. This would be what? 1925. You got Mount Rushmore. Rushmore. Not to be confused with the Wes Anderson shit. Building up from that, you got 1944. And this is Operation Overlord, which you might not have heard of. Operation Overlord. That's D-Day. Skip forward. I guarantee you know this one. JFK gets shot in the head. What is it, Dallas, Texas? Is that right? JFK? And it was later in the year, wasn't it? November? November. Flash forward again. And this is one I'm not quite sure about. And then again, you can take all of this with a grain of salt, and you need to. But it's the Air Florida flight. Air Florida. Florida. I can't spell Florida anyway, but that says Air Florida, and it happens to be this. 737. 14, 15, 16, 17. I don't think I've taught you guys about that. Also remember that the Air Florida flight, I can't fucking say this, it crashed into the 14th Street Bridge, and it fell into the Potomac River, and 346 people died. Yeah. Also remember back in the 80s, recession. That's another thing that was kicking off. Where are we at exactly? 1982? And then the next one should be what I think it is. Unless I fuck it up. I'm number dumb, remember that. So then you got 2001. You guys probably know this one. And you probably know this one. 2020. Oops, I put 22. Alright, let's bring up the calculator. Let's see if I missed anything. Oh, just in case. Here, 9/11. And that thing I'm not allowed to talk about on the internet. One of many. Because the algorithm is everywhere. Yeah. So let's see if I did this right. 1925. You add 19 years. You get 1944. D-Day. You add 19 years. You get 1963, JFK shot in the head. 19 years. You get 1982, the flight crashes into the Potomac. 19 years, you get 9/11. In 19 years, you get something I'm not allowed to talk about on the internet. Make of it what you will. Now, I did rattle off. If you take Pearl Harbor, that's 1941. It does not sync up. But if you think in terms of 19-year cycles and things I babble about in that book that I'm not going to plug in here, but that book, the metatonic cycle. Look up the metatonic cycle. Our masters use this. They use it. Based on the metatonic cycle, our masters travel to regions you and I are not allowed to travel to, based on that time frame. If you're not familiar with the metatonic cycle, look it up. Thanks for hanging out with me. I can teach you things you're not supposed to know. I'm looking for decent people. So in one of the numerous videos I left on the internet today, we talked about this. Since we're living through the Great Reset and no one's doing anything to stop it. You got a 9, you got a 5, you got a 1, you got a 5, you got a 2. To cast 1 is to cast 9. And I'm looking for people who want to take notes, who are invested, which means they're involved, which means they watch these videos and they think about them. It's another reason why I don't show you all the things in one video. It's also TikTok, so it's doing away with attention spans, I grew up with a speech impediment. It's got to be comical. So you can only leave a 10-minute video. And for long-winded bags of meat like myself, that isn't easy. Plus, there's no way to teach you all this shit in a given year, let alone a 10-minute video. To cast 1 is to cast 9. Multiply anything by 1, and it will repeat. It will show you. It will reflect what was reflected by 1, because 1 is monad. Multiply anything by 9, and 9 absorbs it and spits itself back out. You have to cast these. The ancients only taught you to cast 9. You're not going to find people online, as far as I'm aware, that will teach you this. It's crucial. So if you're trying to read the numbers, you're trying to figure shit out, you're never going to see what reflects reality if you're using a 1 and a 9. Ever. Ever. Talk about throwing a veil over something, pulling the wool over your eyes. So when you cast these, 5 plus 5 plus 2 equal 12, which I was babbling about. And when you add them together, all of them, well, here, this is usually how I write it out. You get binary in the center, and the grand total would have been this, which is Artemis the moon. 22 denotes Artemis the moon. The wandering star, which is not a planet. Over here you got a 12, which descends into a recursive downward spiral that leads back to 9. And coincidentally, if you add 9 to 12, you get 21. You get the mirror opposite. It's wild. And when you add the 12 and the 21, you get the 33, which is one step above this and came after this. The legends tell us, the lore, the mythology, the quote-unquote history of where we are, tell us that traveling to Ortagaia, Artemis the moon was traveling with its mother, Leto. And Leto is another name for Satan, Saturn, motherfucking Earth. Crudely speaking, Artemis helped Leto or Satan, Satan L, Saturn L, the thing that you're made from, you and I both, and we live in. It helped give birth to its younger sibling, its twin, Apollo, the sun. It's amazing that doesn't come up. You should watch Westworld. Westworld's got some lesser magic in there. Ortagaia. Look it up. It's hilarious because our masters are laughing at us. Back to point. If you use the English word reset, which has no power, right? Because words have no power. What the fuck do I know? You got a 12 and you got a 22. 22 times 12. Who cares, right? You got a 264. You got 24 hours in a day cradling the 6. I was talking about a reset. So if you add up 24 6 times, which people don't do, this is Venus, by the way, 44. Wandering star, not an adult fairy tale planet. Even though planet translates to wandering star. What the fuck do I know? Yeah. Add up the numbers. 24 times 6. That's what we're doing. I almost got ahead of myself. And you get 144, ironically. Curious, right? Remember to cast 1. What was my other point to this? Aside from the fact that if you add up the numbers 1 through 6, they lead back to 21, which is the rainbow bridge, having to do with our chakras. The guided stars above, most people call the zodiac, or the little animals, or the fixed stars, and a bunch of other bullshit. Flowery bullshit meant to mislead you, but most people believe in star seeds and other garbage. Indigo children and whatnot. We've been misled at every fucking turn, and most people are repeating seeded narratives our masters spoon-fed them. That's why paradigms are in place, because rabbit holes are meant to mislead you. That's why it's in the programming. That's why you see Chase the White Rabbit or Follow the White Rabbit, depending on what you're watching, from The Matrix to George R.R. Martin's space propaganda that he had to make because he was doing well. That's how it works. Yeah, we're looking for roots that reflect the branches. Roots that reflect the fucking branches, because it's symmetrical. That doesn't necessarily describe what perpetuates life, but that's what we're looking for, because that's what reflects reality. Make of it what you will, because at the end of the day, you decide, and most people aren't thinking for themselves, which is why we're in our master's pockets to begin with. There's more of us than them. You hear about it all the time, but no one's doing anything to change a fucking thing. So, on that note, what the fuck do I know? Let's add these together before I go. 462 627. Hopefully I don't fuck it up. You got part of it. 3531. There we go. Numerical palindrome. By the way, that's the guided stars above, and that's Venus. 44, Venus. Lucifer. The Donnie Darko number, 88. I really want to teach people something having to do with that. Because it's not out there in the public sphere, because people are shopping around seated paradigms. It's a big fucking deal. Also, look at it's called The End of the World, I think, and it's 128 minutes. It's 60 plus 28, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? 60 plus 28, I think. What the fuck do I know?